we're going to talk a little bit about some general principles. We've got some people's favourite tools that we may talk about a little bit as well, and we'll see how far we get. But I think to kind of kick off with this, my feeling about duplicates is that it's one of those things where the prevention of them is better than the cure, because actually dealing with duplicates once you've got them is always a little harder. So I think the best form of prevention probably is to try and avoid or to learn not to create duplicates in the first place. And sometimes it's unavoidable. But there's definitely some things around when you've got Salesforce up and running and your users are trying to enter data. There are definitely some best practices and things that you can do that avoid you needing any external tools as well. And thank you for the question, Diane, which is really great, which is talking about how you deal with some duplicate data sets that you've already got in Salesforce, and we will come to that. But I thought, Ashima, just as a nice little sort of warm-up, perhaps you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about, what kind of best practices or what things can you say to your users that would try and avoid creating duplicates in the first place?
Sure. So duplicates are a challenge for sure. So all of you that are struggling with them, know that you don't struggle alone, and know that probably everybody is struggling with you. So it's important that you sort of keep in mind that that duplicates are a nature of being in databases, and that you're contemplating this and thinking about cleaning is awesome. So some of the things that you can do to make sure that duplicates don't get into your database, and some of you may already know that, but having people search for contacts and records before they go and enter them in is always a valuable thing. And the nice thing about Salesforce is there are lots of ways to search, so they don't have to just try and type in the name perfectly. They could be typing in John and Jim and Joe, and lots of records are going to come up for them, and then they can search within those results as well. So and then they can search for phone numbers and email addresses and addresses. So really creating a process for your staff to understand how they can search, and then also asking them to do those things before they actually search or before they enter anything in is valuable. And then, of course, there's the prevention of entering in the duplicates. There's tools that help you do that, or that warn the user that there might be a potential duplicate coming up, and we're going to have some folks talking about that. So as Caroline said, prevention is really important and something you need to consider before anything else. Is that good, Caroline? Something else you want me to talk about?
No, I mean, what about the rest of you? I was thinking there are other things which aren't necessarily, are kind of related to Salesforce, but I think it's always quite important that you, as an organization, you've kind of decided what your standards are and what your formats are going to be.
Absolutely.
Anybody else on the panel want to speak to that one? It's like, how are you going to, what's your standard thing for a formal address? Are you always going to use salutations? Are you always going to show people's middle names? Anybody else got any thoughts around that?
I think this is Deb. If you're going to import from a list, like always kind of going through, well, I would recommend Apsana, and maybe somebody's going to speak to that, because Apsana for importing will catch duplicates, but always just kind of like even looking through your list, is there any names that you already recognize that may be in your data, and take those out of your upload before you even start.
Yeah, and I've come across organizations where they're always a bit inconsistent or have to decide a rule. Sorry, I'm not sure who's. I'm just going to
really weird.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm going to do a little bit of muting of some other people.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. I've organization, like for example, if you have the name of a foundation or something that begins with the, you have the Wallace Foundation, whatever it is, just deciding beforehand whether you're always going to have the at the beginning and therefore have it come under T, or whether you're going to do Wallace Foundation, comma, the. It's sort of things like that, because I find with organizations often that you can kind of get these weird duplicates that aren't duplicates. It's just because people don't quite know how you should refer to something. And I think and pick lists are another one. Do any of you use this idea of trying to encourage your users to, when there's data that needs to be inserted, that you always do it, that you try and set up pick lists where you can, so that things are consistent?
Yep.
Oh. I've stunned everyone else into silence. If anyone else has got any great ideas, then please share. And Maria, what we're doing is we're just talking a little bit about a sort of best practices aside from the actual tools. What are the ways that as an organization you can try and make sure that people aren't creating duplicates? And we're talking about this idea of trying to standardize things as much as we can. Sorry, Ashima, go ahead.
Yep. Well, no, and I was going to say, importing data too, limiting who can import the data and bring it in, or bringing things in as leads, as a holding place. There are lots of things temporarily holding things. So there's an organization that we work with that's importing conference data, and she actually cleans the spreadsheet before she imports it into Salesforce. So she goes in and makes sure that the accounts are the same as what she has already in Salesforce, or closer, so that some of the tools that let her bring it in can pick up on it. But I think that just keeping it limited on who can import data is another way to keep the data clean, or using leads as kind of that holding place for potentials.
So that
we do both of those things.
Oh yeah, great.
I was just going to say, I would support that, because we do both of those things to kind of help ensure that as well.
And that leads me quite nicely on to, because we were going to just talk a little bit. I was, at some point during the week, I did a poll amongst you to find out whether people recommended doing as much data cleaning as you could before bringing information into Salesforce, or whether you did it afterwards. And I think most of you are in favor of first. So I know, Anne, you have a kind of favorite tool that you use.
I do have a favorite tool. It's an Excel tool. It's an add-on. I think it costs about $90, so there is a cost involved, and it is only for PCs. And there may be similar tools out there for Macs that I don't know about. And it's called AbleBits. Do you want me to share my screen super quickly? I know we don't have a lot of time, but it might just be helpful for people to see what it looks like. Okay. I'm going to try and do that. Okay. Okay. Now, do you guys see an Excel spread?
I see a moment of delay.
Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Do you need to, my problem is I select the screen and I always forget to click the play button.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I pushed play. Oh, sorry.
There you go. It's all right. That's always my problem.
And that is my problem too. Okay, how about that?
Oh. Yay!
Oh, there we go. Yay!
Yay! Okay, so AbleBits, it's in your Excel. It's just like 3 different tabs, and it has a bunch of utilities that I would start with first. It can change things to proper text. This has got all sorts of inconsistencies in capitalization. My favorite thing by far is a super powerful search and replace. So if I say, oh gosh, that's not the abbreviation for Missouri, that's wrong, I want to change that. Well, in Excel, you could either search and replace one by one, or you could do it globally. But look, I've got Mission Street here. That's going to be a problem if I do it globally. If you have a lot of, so I can say find all, and then it will just give me all the examples. And I say, no, I just want to do this one and that one. So that's some of the things. And then it can also do tools. It can do some deduplication as well. And you designate the columns, and you can either have it remove it automatically, or you can just have it mark it so you can evaluate it later. So that's just a great tool. I'm sure there's others out there, but they can just save tens of hours of manual work.
Because I think, Because I mean, Jason, you said you like doing VLOOKUPs and kind of Excel the old-fashioned way, and I'm probably with you on that. But it's always a little difficult. You can get tripped up so easily by periods and abbreviations and things like that, can't you?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's the old-fashioned way is the old-fashioned way for a reason, I think, right? Like, there's always, like you said, you can run as many scenarios as you want, but something's always going to kind of slip through the cracks. That being said, I do like doing things in Excel because you get to view your data and see that it looks clean and like catch your dupes before it ever makes it to Salesforce, which, as you were saying before, I think we all agree is a better way of doing things. It's better to catch it before it makes it to Salesforce and then starts to corrupt the data you have that you're actually using.
And Caroline, I just add, I mean, I agree with all of you. Cleaning is very important. I think there's a point where you can go insane with some of the cleaning, and you have to keep in mind that it's part of sort of bringing data in from an external system. And I think a lot of times people get in this mindset of there shouldn't be duplicates in my system, and instead of saying there likely will be duplicates in my system, I'm going to work very hard to make sure that we mitigate those, because there is negative connotations to having them, but we also want to be realistic. And the realism is that you may be pulling in an Excel spreadsheet from another system from 6 different sources that you want to now bring into Salesforce, and you've got to try and find all of the duplicates. Probably not going to happen. But there are some really sophisticated tools and like amazingly powerful products within Salesforce that are third-party apps, obviously not Salesforce-based, but other companies, and we're going to talk about some of them, that will help you find those duplicates probably a lot quicker than you would using Excel, even if you got AbleBits. I mean, it's just probably just not going to get you everything. So it's likely you will bring in some dupes, and I think not beating yourself up over it is really important. I just wanted to add that, Caroline.
I think that's great. Yeah. Thank you for it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. I love cleaning data in Excel, but yes, duplicates are a fact of life.
I know, you do your best, don't you? And
often do your best. That's all we
exactly. Can do. As Lauren has mentioned in a question that she has, they're getting lots and lots of new donors, and that is beginning to create duplicates.
Yay, that's great.
So, yeah, which is great. Exactly. So that sounds like one of those scenarios where you shouldn't be beating yourself up. You should just be celebrating the fact you have lots of new donors. So.
Absolutely.
So it's not always going to be possible to clean up before this information comes in.
Gotta make sure we can get them in on time, but
it's not always going to be possible. They do those
at like CVS now, don't they?
Oh, somebody's talking.
Sorry. It's not always going to be possible to clean up everything before it comes in to your system, particularly if you have an online form, for example, that's collecting information for you, or you have some kind of automated input of information. So there are some things that can help you. Let's talk about the sort of as things come in small batches, or kind of one by one. I'm leading towards you, Deb, because there are some tools around that can help you to identify or duplicates as they're coming into Salesforce, not necessarily in a big import, but sort of in smaller batches. And it used to be that we all had to rely on third-party apps, but about, I don't know, was it about a year ago now? Salesforce actually put some duplicate management into Salesforce itself. And we asked Deb if she would come and talk to us about it, because she's one of the people that we know is using this very successfully. So, Deb, can you tell us a little bit about the data.com dupe management?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have found this to be, I've found this to be a really effective tool. It's very effective for us now. At first, it wasn't so effective because I didn't really, I didn't look at it clearly to see that I needed to make some changes to it for it to be effective for us. So where I would start, the first rule of thumb is definitely work first in a sandbox. Always build and test, especially if you have other folks that are entering data, because you don't want to frustrate them that while you're testing out your matching rules, they're getting these alerts or they're not able to do their job. So definitely work in a sandbox first and test your rules and make sure they're going to do the things that you want them to do. And so as Carolyn's showing you, the tool itself is located under the setup, and it's the data.com administration. And there's two parts. There's the matching rules and then the duplicate rules. And the difference is that with the matching rules, you're going to determine what's considered duplicate. What fields are you looking at, and does the content in the field have to be exact, or can it be fuzzy? And then once you've set up your rules, then you set up the duplicate rules for what happens when a user tries to save a duplicate record. So what I found was knowing our data and how we enter data was really important in getting rules that worked. So my first recommendation is look at the rules that already exist. So for instance, what Carolyn's showing here, the nonprofit email match. Well, this wasn't working for us, because if you look at the criteria, it's checking the home email. Well, we use a lot of leads, and our leads, the emails were populating the work email. And so because that's part of the and criteria, and if it's a work email, it's like, oh, okay, it's not a duplicate because it's not the home email. And so I was finding a lot of duplicates. So what I ended up doing was adding a rule on top of this that said same thing for the first name, last name, but it was kind of an and/or situation with either personal email, and sometimes we had a lot of folks that we didn't have an email address for, but we may have a mailing address. So check their work email or check the city, and if it's the same for one of those, then I want an alert that this may possibly be a duplicate. And then one word on.
I was just sorry. I was sorry to interrupt you, Deb, but actually, because I think you've been sort of answering Lauren's question here, because Lauren had asked about using email addresses as a unique identifier, and she says, "Is there a good best practice about blocking this?" But it's interesting. You're right, isn't it? That email, just this first name, last name, and email may not be actually the best of matches. Because, as you say, some people don't have emails, and you have different emails for people. So that's interesting that you're using a wider range of things to create your rule.
And the nice thing is,
step in really
sure.
quick. This is Lauren. Sorry, just to explain what I'm talking about. One of the things we've had happening a lot is we have a lot of different email addresses. We have a lot of different changes, but we also have a lot of strangers coming into our group right now. Like, we just don't know them. So we've actually transferred in Salesforce to the email address being a unique identifier where we have different contacts for different email addresses, and we group them under households. And so we see that we've got, that this person, Caroline, has 3 different email addresses. So there are 3 Carolines, but we're tracking the email activity because that's a lot of what's happening online and that online activity. So that, for us, that's what we do, is so we separate that out. So there is no work email or home email because we are trying to track what's going on by the email address.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree, that's an even better strategy, I think, to, it's interesting. A quick poll of the rest of you. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that you have lots of alternatives both for phones and emails in the Nonprofit Starter Pack, and it's interesting how many contacts do you get where you get more than one, either a phone or an email. I mean, half of the time you're lucky to get at least one value, aren't you? Never mind being able to do them in all different ones. Sorry.
We get a few different, because we have types of contacts. Our foundation is for a rare disease, so we have patients, and then we also have physicians, and a lot of times we'll have a couple of different email addresses for the physicians. They may have multiple work email addresses, and they may also have, if we're lucky, we get their personal one too, and that frequently that's how you best get a hold of them. But so yeah, that, and I think that's probably, that's a good idea to kind of clarify the emails a little bit better. But I know what's nice about with this is that you don't have to have only one matching rule. You can have like multiple levels of matching rules. So I didn't even turn off the existing ones. It's kind of like I have a multi-layered filter that if this doesn't catch it, then the next one may catch it. So that would be a recommendation too, is look at the existing rules that are already there, because you may want to keep those on because they may capture something. It's like you want to add to them, not necessarily get rid of them or change them. I would leave the existing ones as they are, and then just add additional rules to it to kind of to fine-tune what's being filtered. One thing I would also mention is that because I hadn't really touched the account, and then I found that we were starting to get duplicate accounts because we have a new staff member who's entering data. And the tricky thing about doing something with the accounts is, what do you do with household accounts? You might have a lot of people that have the same last name, and you don't want that to get blocked every time that household account is being automatically made. And so within the duplicate rules, I made sure to add that as a criteria to, when looking at accounts, to look at the record type and to exclude household accounts from the record type. And that's helped with that. And then,
Deb, did you choose to block people from being able to save it, or is it an alert, or how did you choose that? You have that choice with data.com.
I've chosen, because we're a small staff, and predominantly there's just 2 of us that do most of the data entry, and our new gal is relatively new, but I know for myself, I know our data pretty well. I've been in it quite a bit. So I go with the allow, because the nice thing is that you're going to get the alert, you'll get an alert, and it's going to tell you this may potentially be a duplicate record, and it's going to tell you who it is, and it's going to give you some details on it. So you're not just blindly choosing, I'm going to go ahead and save this anyways. You can compare those 2 records to each other before you hit save, so that, or if it's not a duplicate, hit save. If it is, you just cancel the one that you were trying to save. So I lean towards making sure that there's an alert and then allowing. but I guess I think it's going to depend on each organization and how much freedom you want to give other people in the organization to go ahead and make those calls.
That's great, Deb. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. That's great.
And I think this is this tool is great because you've all got it and it's in every Salesforce instance. There are also some third-party tools that do very similar things. Anybody on the panel used Dupe Blocker or Dupe Catcher? Or those I think are the main ones, aren't they?
I'll just mention that we used Dupe Blocker prior to this. And maybe Dupe Blocker has changed, but when I was using it, you couldn't, now I'm going to forget. It either wouldn't catch.
Yep.
Was it contacts or account?
It was
one
account.
or the other.
It was
right.
It was it triggered there's a trigger that creates the account, and it was causing problems with, Yep.
And so I'll just.
Yeah, it would be the same thing. I don't imagine it would be any different because there's a trigger creating a household for you. So likely, unless they fixed it, it would be the same issue.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Ann or Jason know.
Yeah.
No, I've had the same experience. Yeah. I have not been able to successfully use it.
Yeah. So
however, you won't have trouble with.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah. I kind of gave up on Dupe Blocker and. When I figured out how to use the data.com, and I've been really happy with it.
That's great. If anyone has any more quick questions for Deb, otherwise we'll start moving on. Joanne Crabtree had asked if people will...
I do.
Yes, and you'd asked if people...
Again.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Deb, I'm looking at your screen. I think it's your screen. In terms of the duplicate rules, and I was wondering kind of what the difference is between action on create and action on edit, and how you're managing that in terms of alerts and reports. Could you just kind of walk me through that?
Sure. So I have the alert turned on for both, and this is what I've found, and is what's nice is that, so, our database was pretty well populated, and then before we got this tool. So what I'm finding now is that when I am editing an existing contact, sometimes it'll say, when I go to save, like, I think there's another contact in your database that may be a duplicate of this. And so it occasionally it's catching dupes that exist in my database that I was unaware of. So I think it's a nice feature.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I feel like I've had issues in the past with this, with the alert, having difficulties with third-party integrations, like if it's like an online form builder that's supposed to create contacts. Do you know definitively if the alert can cause issues with third-party integrations trying to create records that might be duplicates?
I don't, but that is one of the reasons why when it came to the duplicate rules for the accounts that I made sure to exclude, like down under the conditions, I said that the record type does not equal household account because I was concerned about that very thing. So I think that's probably a real concern. And I'm wondering, depending on what third party you're using, if maybe you can alleviate some of those issues by using the different conditions.
Okay. And that's kind of what I've experienced is sometimes it's beneficial if you are using a third-party integration to set up two separate rules. One that is it's setting up the alert, and you set your criteria to exclude any records that would come in from that third party, and then you create another one where the criteria is only for records coming from that third party, and you set that to only report, so that you don't block the third party, but at least you still get that report so you can audit any duplicates that might be coming in through the external third-party integration.
That's a great idea, and I didn't realize that you could actually set up those kind of conditions based on the third party. So that's great information to know.
Well, I mean, you would have to identify a condition that matches third party, like hopefully like
Sure.
a record type, or maybe like a specific, you have an admin only user or something like that.
Kind of like you were saying, Deb, with your condition, the same kind of thing, right? Exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Great. Very nice. Joanne Crabtree had asked if people were willing to share the matching rules that they're using. I think let's take that one to the Power of Us Hub, and if anybody has a matching rule that's working for them, or maybe even one that isn't quite working and they'd like some help, let's take that to the Power of Us Hub and to conversation. And if one of the panel wouldn't mind just replying to Katie about the issue about dupe blocker, which I think is to do with NPSP accounts.
I am replying to her right now.
Fantastic.
Sorry,
because we're doing well. We still have a few things that we wanted to cover. Okay. I think we were going to talk a little bit about what happens when I've got a larger lot of records to import. I think we might just punt that for a little bit and come back, because I'd love to leave some time to talk about what you do when you've actually got dupes. And there are a couple of different ways to deal with them. And I think you were just going to, if you wouldn't mind just briefly talking to people about the tools that are kind of there and in Salesforce, so contact merge and account merge.
Oh yes, contact merge. Okay, I will talk about it. And I guess the easiest way to do that is try to share my screen.
Just tell me what to do if you're looking at the screen. I can.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so if you go into the contact, so if you, let's say like you're Deb and you've just identified some potential dupes, and now you determine you do need to merge them, they are true dupes. So you would go into contact merge, which is a tab, and it's either at the top of your screen, or you have to push the little plus button if it's not. And you go in, and
of course,
don't have
what I don't
here.
know is whether we've got any dupes.
Yes, I had some dupes. I had some dummy dupes set up.
Well,
do you want me to add some, Caroline? I'll add some.
No,
yeah,
and if your screen is there, we'll change the presenter, because you've probably got some ready.
Yeah, I had one ready that was
Go
easy.
for you. Go for it then.
Okay. Let's see if I can do it this time more efficiently than last time.
All right. And I think, as well as the contact merge, let's also, if you could also show people where account merge is, because that one's a bit hidden.
That one is a bit hidden. Okay, so does everyone see my screen?
We do.
Oh, you do, okay, great. Okay, contact merge. So I found some contacts that I determined were indeed duplicates. And I do actually know someone named Jane Jones, and so I feel bad that I always use her as an example. So I have two Jane Jones, and these I want to merge. This is pretty easy. I click the ones I want. I can pick up to 3. Now I need to pick one as the master record. In this case, it's pretty clear that this has 2 members of the household, so I'm going to probably pick this one as a master, because this is where basically the other data, contact data, will move to this data. If I pick this one, and I actually just tested this out, it will take Jane out of her existing household and leave Jeff in it. It won't combine the households. It's only combining the contacts. So be aware of that. Then the other thing that always trips people up, and then on a field-by-field basis, just pick the right information. This is pretty easy, but sometimes you might have more updated information on one contact than the other. The thing that really freaks people out, and I don't have an opportunity on my second one, is if there's, oh yes, maybe I do. Yeah, I do. This hasn't rolled up. you think, wait a second, I want both. I don't want just one or the other. But that's okay. Nonprofit, the contact merge knows that. And it knows that you want your activities and tasks as well. So you just set it and don't worry about that part, and then you merge.
Anne, before you move on, can you explain what it means to pick one as a master record?
Yeah, so when you pick one as a master record, that is the winning record. That means that if there's 2 Jane Joneses, it's gonna pick that. It's going to move, like if there's a contact 1 and contact 2, it's going to move everything from, if you pick contact 1 as the master, it will move everything from contact 2 to contact 1's record. And why that matters is because, like in that case where there was 2 contacts in one household, on one contact was in a household with 2 people and the other one wasn't, I wanted to maintain that relationship with Jeff. Had I picked number 2 as the master one, it would have taken Jane out of the Jane and Jeff Jones household, leaving Jeff in his own household and adding Jane, merging Jane with the other contact in her own household. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I
so,
sometimes find the master record can be a problem if I have some kind of external reference to the like a number that is matching to another system. Is that I always have to choose the master record to be the one with the external reference. Otherwise, it tells me I've got dupes. But there we go.
So, Anne, so it's important to really think through when you're picking that master record, not just randomly letting the dialogue or that little radio button be on one of them, but like, okay, so let me look through the data and decide and kind of think through which one is going to be the winner of the merge.
Right, and I think that maybe the Salesforce algorithm picks the most recently created, although I don't know that. It's not always clear to me why, because why Salesforce like defaults to one or the other. Maybe somebody else knows that.
Laurel just said it's the most recently edited in her experience.
Recently edited. Okay. Okay. Yes, that would make sense. Yeah, it's just figuring. Look, you've looked at this. You've been in this most often. You probably were updating it, but you might have been updating it for an entirely different reason. So. So that might not be the case. One thing I wish, and maybe I'll request this, is that the contact merge, had some information about the number of household members in an account. So. And
Laurel has suggested that she says she games the system by always saving the one she wants to be the master right before the merge. Smart.
Yes, that's true. And I've like put in a 1. I've edited the name, so I put in a 1 at the end. I mean, there's ways to game it. So, and then if you need to merge accounts, it is you just choose the account tab at the top. And then you get your home screen, and then maybe you've never even known that there was stuff down here, and you just merge the accounts from here. And it works pretty much the same way. I haven't used this tool for a while, actually, so I don't know what I've got in here that might be mergeable. Yeah, no, I don't have anything, but
you're getting some appreciation for that one. it's good to know.
I know. It's like one of those like hidden and Salesforce things, isn't it? I don't know how long I was working in Salesforce before I discovered that.
So anybody, Laurel asks, under what circumstances would you merge an account rather than doing it via contacts? Anybody?
So it depends on what sort of accounts you have. If sometimes if you've identified you want to go through scenarios like maybe you have different contacts, but they're all in different accounts. I often like, just for safety, to merge the accounts first and then merge the contacts within the accounts. And that's kind of the way that Salesforce is kind of natively designed to, work as well. So tools like demand tools and stuff kind of assume you're going to do it that way. With the nonprofit starter pack, it works a little bit differently, but I still sometimes do it that way.
And the one that, if any of you are still using the one-to-one account model in Nonprofit Starter Pack, if you merge contacts, then it should all take care of itself behind the scenes for you, that when you merge the contacts, the one-to-one account should also merge. But if for any reason information was changed on the underlying account, they may not quite merge. I've come across this with an organization that has a lot of one-to-one accounts. So it's always worth double checking. And it may be that you also have to merge those accounts if the contact merge hasn't done it for you. So that's if you're still on the legacy and you're not using the household account model. You may need to clean up one-to-ones. Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed, Anne. We've got some good questions. We'll keep working on those. But we did want to have a little bit of time. I'm now going to throw the spotlight on Jason, because the tools that are there for merging contacts and accounts are great if you only have a few and you're kind of doing them one by one. But sometimes you might find yourself in a circumstance where actually you do have a lot of duplicates, maybe because an import went wrong, or somebody's imported a whole load of information that they didn't check first. So Jason, again, in the sort of asking all of you beforehand, it seemed that the clear favourite for dealing with dupes after you've got them is demand tools. And it's a complicated tool, but we've challenged you to spend 5 minutes just doing a quick overview of demand tools for people. So take it away, Jason. I will make you the presenter.
Okay, 5 minutes. I'll do what I can.
I've got a link for the training video if I could put in the chat if people want to look at it later.
Please do, Anne. That would be great.
An overview, but I would still recommend their actual training. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, are we seeing my screen or are we still paused?
Seeing your screen.
Okay, wonderful. So this is demand tools. It's not something you install into Salesforce. It's an app, or I guess a program that you download into Windows. Programs were things that were around before apps. I think they both mean the same thing. Anyway, so demand tools does require an active account, but unless something's changed relatively recently, it is free for nonprofits. So it's a great value. And as Caroline was saying, it allows you to do a number of things, but one of the most important things is you can run deduplications against an entire, your entire contact database, set up the criteria, and it's going to return results. So this is what it looks like when you first log in. On the left, you can see single table dedupe, which is what we're going to be working with. Single table just means contact to contact or account to account. So let's click on this. We're going to run through a quick contact example. They kind of guide you through the process with these, I don't know, life preservers or poker chips. Not sure exactly what they are, but they have numbers on them, and they're going to tell you what steps and what order to go through this. So the very first thing you want to do is pick the object that you're trying to dedupe. In this case, we're going to go ahead and just work with contacts. And then once you choose the object, you're going to choose your criteria. And it comes with a bunch of preloaded criterias. You can check for dupes between accounts, or you can check for dupes within the same account. As far as I know, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, when it says within accounts, it only considers the standard account field. So it really, if you're using like the household account model, it's really only looking at dupes within a household. So if you have 2 people in the same household, and if I'm wrong about that, someone please let me know. But I think oftentimes you want to check between accounts because of that fact. And I'm not going to use one of the defaults because I don't really have any dupes that would match the defaults, so I set up a different criteria. But as you click through them, they'll kind of give you a description of what they are going to show and what they mean. So you can see this one would be first name matching first name matching last name, and it's applying what it calls alpha clean here. That's going to help get rid of odd characters. It's going to make it case insensitive. It helps exact matching. And then email matching email exact. So obviously that's what we're setting up here. I'm going with my demo. When you're choosing a scenario, you can also choose the fields that you want to see in the eventual table that you're going to use to clean up your dupes. So yeah, I already created the scenario. I'm going to go to step 2, which is the mapping. And right now, I'm just looking at last name fuzzy. So last name, like close match, and it has certain fuzzy parameters that it uses for names and things like that. And then email, I'm saying just match the first 5 letters of the email. So you can, as you see, like there's a lot of different like matching types here, like zip code matching. So it includes a ton of different defaults to help you find the type of matching and help you track down your dupe. You could add additional call or conditions to this, but again, for this example, I want to keep it nice and simple so that we see some results. So I'm going to click to go to step 3, and when we do that, it's returning a bunch of stuff. Sorry, getting some background noise a little bit. Can everyone still hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Keep going, Jason.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you. So this is what the made-up org that I use for all my various tests and experiments looks like. This is, every contact is test something pretty much. Not particularly interesting, but you can see all these were returned because I made about 5,000 variations of my email address, and I just said return the first 5 letters, and so J Cook is within the first 5 letters. And each of these duplicate keys, these are going to be like within this set, within this bracket here, is what it considers matches. So it thinks Peter and Pierre are a match. It thinks James, Jason, Jeff, and John are all a match because I'm not specifying first name at all. And then it thinks all of these tests are all matches in the same contact. So what do we do about that? Basically, and here's our life preserver poker chips again, kind of telling you the steps that you go through. The first thing you want to do is we're setting default masters. And again, most recently modified or most recently edited is what's going to be the master by default, same as with the contact merge. And you can create your own master rules. You can choose some of the different options here. But usually it's easiest just to leave it to the most recent. Some other things that are really cool, and I want to wrap this up really quick. One thing that I really like, you can set the batch size. So you can kind of, if you have a lot of custom code that maybe like larger batches don't work well, you can control that. And I think one of the coolest options is if you're trying to clean stuff up, but you're not super comfortable deleting a ton of contacts, you get this ability where you can say add a prefix instead. And so you specify what field, in this case it's using last name, and it's just going to prefix delete in all caps with 3 stars onto the last name field. So by doing that, when you hit your merge of your checked records, instead of deleting those, you're going to keep them, but you're just going to rename the ones that didn't win in the merge. So what happens is they're still in your database, but you can easily report on them. You could move them to an archive record type. You could use that report to later delete them because now they're easily identifiable through this prefix. It just offers a little peace of mind because deleting a lot of records at once can be pretty scary. And then, I mean, that's the broad strokes of it. You can override the master rule. You can set a master with the, I believe, yeah, force as master contact. So if you right click, you can see. So I've forcefully declared James the master in this scenario, regardless of who would have been the master via the defaults. And then once you're ready to go, and also you could exclude certain records from the merge. So you could say, oh, John actually shouldn't be merged with these. So you could just uncheck John and completely remove him from the merge process. And basically, once you're ready to go, you can just, in the bottom right, you can click Merge Check Records, and it's either going to delete the losers or add the prefix of your choosing to them so you can come back and delete them at your leisure later. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, that's the broad strokes. Anyone else, feel free to chime in with the last 5 minutes we have.
Well, that's great. There actually are a couple of questions we could look at. Maria asks, what's the maximum numbers that can be merged in one go? Anybody?
So, like the maximum batch, or?
I think it's how many. Demountals is pretty robust and can handle really big data sets. I have actually run it across kind of 600,000 contacts to go, but I have to say a couple of things. One is it takes a long time, and you think that the tool has crashed because it's taking a long time. The other thing is the bigger the batch, I think there's always that thing about you really want to be able to kind of look at this and look and make sure that you really are finding dupes, you know, and the bigger the batch you have here, the harder it is to double check. So I would always try and somehow filter things down, maybe by, you know, start with last name begins with A, or last name, or, you know, something like that. I don't know what other tricks people have, but I always find that trying to, particularly when you're getting used to this tool, that the more you can limit how many dupes you're looking at one time, the easier it is.
Right. And within a set of dupes, like I see you're asking about, like, Salesforce Native has 3 at once. I don't know offhand if there's a limit on how many of these I can checkbox. Caroline, do you know? Like, I know it's more than 3. I don't know if there's a limit, like, because obviously there's a ton of dupes for this one test user. And I'm not sure.
If you asked it to, it would go ahead and merge all of those. So I don't think
that's a limit.
Yeah, I
didn't think it had a problem with that, yeah.
And Patty asked about whether this would merge accounts as well. Anybody? Anne,
yeah, so,
actually, or I'll come back to Anne, because you talked about best practices with native merge.
Go ahead.
So Anne, do you want to, because actually this is a good best practice with this as well, isn't it?
Okay, so what is the
question was, does it merge accounts as well? And what I was hoping you would say that people,
yeah,
that people
this is
should
what
look at their
I was.
first.
Yeah, I would start with demand tools. If you just merge with contacts, it will orphan accounts, which is a problem. So I would start with. That's why I usually start with accounts and move the other direction.
Because, yeah, you're right. It's going to orphan accounts, and it also can be a problem if there are records related to it, like donation
related
opportunities.
Records. Yes, and it will. Yeah, and it will just kind of, you can make some painful mistakes with demand tools. So you really need to take the time to understand the tool and to do the training. use it in Sandbox and get comfortable with it before you start. Or you could use it, what I often do actually is to just identify the records with the find IDs, because it's fantastic, and then export them, and then use the native Salesforce features like contact merge to actually do the work. I mean, if you have, you know, thousands and thousands of them, maybe that's not practical, but if you have not a manageable number, that's also a solution. It's just to use them to find the dupes.
It's,
one other thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just really quick, I forgot about. You can actually edit records through this as well. So, like when I was saying John isn't part of this, like if we're like, oh, well, it shouldn't be wrong, and that's why he got included, I could change this and update it, and that would reflect in Salesforce. So you can make that change directly in Demand Tools, which is kind of nice.
Fantastic. So that's great. And as I think some of the chat going on, always with Demand Tools, be really careful to make sure you can match as many different values as possible, so you can be really sure that that's really what you're doing. And Amanda mentioned earlier on that she uses Cloud Dingo for data cleanup, and that is a great alternative. I think a lot of us like Demand Tools because it has, once you've kind of figured it out, it's got so many features and so much flexibility, and you can kind of use it to dedupe almost anything. But absolutely do look at the other things, and Cloud Dingo is a very good second choice if this all looks a bit intimidating. So we are. Thank you very much, Jason. Okay, we are we're right on 10 o'clock. We covered almost everything on the agenda, and we've had some great questions. Thank you very much. I think the thing we perhaps didn't get quite to is ways of avoiding dupes when you import information, but maybe we can take that conversation to the Power of Us Hub, because I don't want to take up everybody's time on a Friday just before a holiday. So I thank you very much indeed to the panel. Thank you, all of you. I hope you all have a fantastic holiday weekend.